by 2040, there would be 23 times Wembley Stadium worth of batteries coming offline globally every single year. And as they face the racism in the UK, it's still there here now. It's beneath the surface. And I visibly was different. I really enjoyed being in the choir. I was told it wouldn't be appropriate because it didn't have the right look. They would just make the assumption that because I'm of Indian origin, that automatically means I want to be a doctor, which I try and do every day because it makes them and my wife laugh.
A boy who had to resit his first year of A-levels went on to feature in Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe Tech Founders. He received Hawley Award for Engineering Innovation and was finalist in Rolex Award for Enterprise. The best part is that he never wanted to be an entrepreneur like his father. The journey of the family has been in 3 countries from different continents: India, Kenya, and the UK. It is a beautiful story of identity, belonging, immigration. Hello and welcome to India, a Story in the Making. And thank you, Dr. Amrit Chandan, for joining me.
Thank you so much, Louina, for having me.
Take me to the head, the life, the moment, and the journey of that little 17-year-old boy. Bring me up to speed to that moment when you had to decide to give your resit for A-levels.
So this is all in Birmingham, in the UK. So about 2 hours north of London. And my parents wanted to make sure we always had the best access to opportunity. So wildcard opportunity came up with King Edward School, which is a fee-paying private school. It was in the top 5 schools in the UK, secondary school. And when I went to the school, it was a total culture shock for me because before that, the schools I'd been to were predominantly they were state schools open to the public, and there was a good mix of people there, and they were local schools. And this school had everyone coming from the local private schools, the private primary schools, and they all knew each other. And I was there. I was one of the few people who didn't really know anyone else, and that was a real shock. And then also because everyone there was exceptionally bright and everyone there was sort of being pushed very hard, this identity I had, and as I was growing up, of being naturally quite clever and wanting to not having to try too hard with the work that I was doing, but in school, not being challenged by it too much. Suddenly that all changed as well. And it was a real difficult period of trying to find exactly who I was in this maelstrom of growing up and everything that entails. And so through most of the time at the school, it was a case of coasting. I didn't really work very hard. And that I look back on that now and think that there was so much wasted potential. When the first year of the A-levels happened, I came home from receiving the results. I hadn't looked at them. I was scared. I knew that it wasn't going to be a good outcome because I had done nothing, no work leading into it. And what actually happened was even worse because it was disappointment. It wasn't telling off. It was disappointment that I wasn't living up to the potential that I had. And that was the hardest thing to ever see, especially
in your parents' face.
In my parents' face, yes. This is my dad, especially said to me, "But we know you could do much better. This is just really disappointing. But we want to support you in whichever way we can. So tell me what we want to do." And yeah, it was a really hard thing to come to terms with.
I think it was, if parents give a chittar, a slap, it's easier. Then you have to deal with the slap. But you were dealing with the actual disappointment. So you were very clever, but you coasted in your school. Was there a particular reason? And tell me a bit more about your parents as well.
So my dad is one of 9 siblings. He was born in India and then moved to the UK when he was 2 years old. And it was a similar story for my mum as well. Well, my mum was born in Nairobi, but came to the UK when she was 3 years old. And so they grew up predominantly here and went through all sorts of hardships as they grew up, as many people at that time did. We're talking the 60s and the 70s. It was a very challenging time for people, especially immigrants in the UK. The sentiment in the UK was not that friendly towards immigrants, and we grew up hearing these stories about what life was like. And as you grow up, I think as a child, you sometimes you think, oh, it's not like that now. Actually, a lot of the challenges they face, the racism in the UK, it's still there here now. It's beneath the surface. You went through a really good period in the 90s and the early 2000s, and then the world's sadly gone much more challenging to live in.
Were you very visible or invisible in your school? What was impacting your mind?
I think that visibly was different. I was one of the only, there was really sort of maybe 3 or 4, but I was the only one who, when I started the school, I was wearing the star. I was firmly rooted in the philosophy of Sikhism. And in my primary school, I'd really enjoyed being in the choir, and that was something that was really important to me. I wanted to continue this in the secondary school, and in the first year, I was told it wouldn't be appropriate because it didn't have the right look.
Wow.
And that was a really hard thing. That was a really hard thing to hear. I didn't really know many people in the school. I was sort of trying to find my place, and I just felt like compared to a lot of the other people there. So it was a deeply uncomfortable feeling, and that I think ultimately led to this feeling of just get through this and see where I end up.
So we are talking which years?
This is 2000 to 2007.
How did you translate being too visible in the eyes of people so much so that they want to make you invisible?
I think it certainly impacted the belief I had about myself and the mindset. And certainly like the feedback I had from some of the teachers was, well, you're never going to amount to anything. So why bother? I mean, I remember there was also a level of stereotyping as well. So the careers advisors, for example, they would just make the assumption that because I'm of Indian origin, that automatically means I want to be a doctor. That was there was no advice about it. It was just, well, don't do what every other Asian does and be a doctor. Try and do something else.
But you never wanted to be one, and your parents never asked you to be one.
No, my parents never asked us any of us. I've got 2 brothers, and none of us are asked to become doctors.
Can we do away with the stereotype that not every Indian origin person was told, even at that time, to be a doctor, engineer? Okay, for a person who was feeling down and was coasting and was told will amount to nothing really by his own teachers, you felt the disappointment of your parents and it hit you. And you were actually being told to leave the school at that point. What made you bring yourself back?
I decided I didn't want to be talked down to anymore by the school. There was almost like a reset in my mind of, I don't want to experience that disappointment ever again. And I literally that same day in the afternoon, I went up into my room and I cleared everything off my desk, all the rubbish. I brought all the books out and I just started studying literally that same day. And the rest of the summer, it was straight into study. We had a meeting scheduled at school that was due to come up, and that was the point at which they said, we would prefer it if you left the school. And to which I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it all. And I'm going to show everyone that I can do it.
And then you showed.
Yes. So I think so this is now the second year of A-level. There was an opportunity to do that. And I managed to get over 90% on all of those.
Wow.
Then turned full attention to the A-levels. I remember one of the teachers said to me, you've done something which is, don't underestimate it. It's really a Herculean effort.
Tell me your journey after that.
There was also the university applications, which they were really challenging for me because it was based on the first year of A-levels and the teachers' predictions about what you would get. And at that time, the teachers, they didn't have any belief that I would
do anything.
I would do anything. I would improve in any way. So I was applying to university with really bad perceived grades. And so I didn't give it that much thought. I sort of knew that this was a situation, and I thought I want to do a degree in something. I don't know exactly what I want to do the degree in. And I ended up picking chemistry because that was one of the subjects I was studying, and that seemed to be a good fit, something I found interesting, and so that's what I ended up going with. And at that time, there was definitely an element of luck in this because chemistry at that point in time was undersubscribed, and there were actually departments closing. So in the year that I applied, King's College, as an example, they closed their chemistry department. That was a
So they said, come, doesn't matter the grades. So ended up in Birmingham University.
at Birmingham University doing that work. And for the next 3 years, again, I just wanted to prove I could do it. I graduated at the top of my class with the first class honours degree in chemistry.
The disappointment on your parents' face became your motivation, inspiration, and you have never looked back. You've never looked back. Have your parents told you, well done, Amrit?
They have been incredibly encouraging and supportive, and they were proud of.
But the beauty is of parents that they knew and they were proud of even the boy who got D's and E's. And they just showed the disappointment, but not took away the love. So then you become an entrepreneur, but you didn't want to be because your father was one.
There were two career paths I didn't want to do. One was being an entrepreneur because that was exactly what my dad was doing. My dad is an optometrist, so he was running his own practice in Handsworth, and it was really hard seeing how hard he was working all the time, and to provide for us. The school fees were not cheap, and they put all three of us, in myself and my two brothers, into the school, and so that was also one of the reasons why I felt that disappointment so deeply as well. And so I didn't want to do that because I saw the sort of stress. And the other career path I didn't want to do was teaching, because my mum was a primary school teacher and I saw how much stress she was under.
So you ended up becoming an entrepreneur and teaching entrepreneurship as well. How did you become an entrepreneur?
As I was finishing my degree, and I knew that I was going to get this first class honours degree, I started applying to the graduate schemes. And again, for those who don't know, in the UK, when you get a degree, because so many people get degrees and they want jobs within, I found the process to be incredibly grueling. You would have your CV, your resume, and then you would have to take all the information from your resume and put it into these horribly designed online forms. And each application would require you to have paragraph answers to various topics. And so I did one or two applications, and the worst feeling was when at the end of it you get a sort of email that says, thank you for your application. Due to the high volume of applications, we're not going to give you any feedback, and if you don't hear from us in 2 weeks' time, you can assume that we're not interested in proceeding with your application. And so that sparked in me again this feeling of I don't want to conform. I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do my own thing, find my own path. I don't want to jump through the hoops of all of these people. I want to be the one sort of holding the hoop, and other people will be jumping through those. And so I decided at that time that this was also the time of the global financial crash as well. And because of my high grades, I was offered several opportunities to do PhDs. And so I picked an opportunity in chemical engineering in the field of hydrogen technology, and started doing my PhD. And so I got my first taste of entrepreneurship because there was a grant that the university was giving, and that was my first foray into it. When I was doing my undergraduate degree, I didn't do anything extracurricular because I was so focused on studying.
Oh.
And so when I did my PhD, I thought this is an opportunity to explore all of the extracurricular things that the university has. And so I pretty much did everything I could get my hands on while I was studying. And one of those was this entrepreneurship course, which I took part in. And then at the end of it, there was a small partner opportunity. And I remember the first thing I did with another PhD friend of mine. We applied for a business competition with some of the ideas we had around the technical work we were doing. And that was a great experience. We learned how to pitch the idea. We pitched in front of a panel, which was made up of other entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. And then we won that competition, and that was amazing.
But you did work.
Did work as well. So while I was doing my PhD, I started doing some consulting. And that was that was my very first business. We started a consultancy business, which was exploring the topic around electric vehicles and how we can bring those to market. Then once I finished my PhD, because of that sort of extracurricular work and the work that I'd done during the PhD, I was offered a job. And so I went to work at the Center for Excellence in Hydrogen. And as a technical specialist, I worked there for just under a year. And it was while I was there, that's where I met the co-founder of Aceleron.
I was curious to hear from you that you were not happy that you were not giving too much work.
One of the other things I've realized is that I'm a very fast worker. And so while I was at this job, I was doing work very quickly, and it became an annoyance to my boss. He didn't want to give me more work. He started sort of saying that I was working too quickly and making his job more difficult. And so I felt myself getting to a place where I didn't feel intellectually stimulated enough. I had this really wonderful piece of advice really early on in my career from a mentor. Don't chase money, focus on the experience, focus on the learning. And the more you do this, the more other opportunities and other things will just fall into place, and the money will find its way to you separately. I also learned, because of the lack of intellectual stimulation, that job was really well paid, but because I didn't feel stimulated, it also helped me realize that I wasn't motivated by money. Yes, you need a certain level of income to live, but it wasn't the biggest motivator for me. And then I met my co-founder, Carlton. So Carlton is originally from Barbados, and he'd come to the UK to study a master's in design. And he was deeply passionate about future technology as well, electric vehicles and so on. And so it started out as an after-school project or an after-work project. We'd spend an extra hour after work, think about ideas and plan things. And then we started applying for competitions and grants. And in order to stress test the idea, we first met, Carlton and I, in September 2015, and we had our first conversation about what became Aceleron in November 2015, and then by March 2016 we decided there was enough of an opportunity that we wanted to leave the work and pursue this as a full-time piece of work. And then in August of 2016 we incorporated the company on Companies House, and the rest is history.
And the first time around, it was the disappointment that pulled you through from ASE to acing it. And the second time round was not enough work. And the fact that you learned about yourself, that you have to follow excellence, not money. And Aceleron was born. Tell me about Aceleron and its success.
The world electrifies. We need lots and lots of batteries. And the reason we need batteries is because as we use more solar power, we use more wind power, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And this creates instability in the electricity grid, because when you generate electricity, you have to use it straight away. You can't store it within the grid easily. And so that's the role that a battery plays. A battery is very good at storing that power for use later. And so as you have more of these technical devices like solar panels and wind turbines coming online, you need more storage to account for that intermittency. Otherwise, you have things like blackouts happening, which no one wants. And so we recognized that we would need a lot of lithium-ion batteries. Lithium was a technology that looked like it was going places. It is now the sort of state-of-the-art battery technology. So all of our electric vehicles, everything that we drive now, is powered by lithium pretty much. And so we saw this big use coming, but we also were looking at the fact that most of these batteries are not designed with the end of life in mind at all. And so the analogy that I use is, imagine if you're driving down the road in your car and something goes wrong with the car. You don't scrap the vehicle. It doesn't make sense to scrap it. But this is what we end up doing with the batteries.
Batteries, yeah. So where will the batteries end up? Where do you dispose them of?
We worked out that by 2040, there would be 23 times Wembley Stadium worth of batteries coming offline globally every single year. So this is a huge problem. We knew that we needed a different way of making battery. You know, the big problems with lithium batteries is that they are constructed with lots of permanent technique. They're made up of lots of components. And if one of those components doesn't work as well, it means that the overall battery doesn't work as well anymore. And so we came up, my co-founder Carlton, he came up with this idea of, what if we could build a battery module and we do it in such a way that the components are easy to take apart, put together, which means we can swap out components over time. And we can therefore increase the impact that these devices can have over their life. And this is especially relevant because in emerging economies like Sub-Saharan Africa, like India, like Central America, people want access to the best technology, and buying brand new is expensive. We had a way of constructing the battery when those batteries reach the end of life, for them to be taken apart much more safely and reused as much as possible, which extends the life. Each battery that's made requires mining, requires resources, requires a lot of energy to be put into the system. So the longer you can keep these batteries being used, especially for power, for charging on solar, the more of a positive impact they have in the world.
And for that, you got the awards.
Yeah, so this was the innovation that ended up winning us quite a few awards.
Aceleron, how did it have a practical impact on our lives?
Most of our work was taking place in sub-Saharan Africa and India as well. So Toyota, as an example, were one of our corporate investors. And Africa, especially with the rise and proliferation of electric motorcycles and two-wheeler, three-wheelers as well. So battery swapping became a big thing, and so being able to use the batteries that may have come from cars and anticipating the growth in the electric vehicle. We were working with some of the tier one automakers in India to understand again how this technology could be introduced at the very beginning for the three-wheelers and the four-wheelers, the light mobility.
Auto, what we know as autos, what people don't understand here. We'll show the picture of auto.
We were exporting our technology into India. We were talking to quite a few Indian companies. They wanted to bring technology in that they could drop in and start working with, entering into license agreements. So we were licensing our technology for use in that space. We'd raised about £15 million in funding. We'd grown the team to about 35 people. We had projects going on all over the world. The project I was most proud of, we designed a battery repurposing facility in a box, in a container, so a 40-foot shipping container with everything you could repurpose batteries, designed to be self-sufficient. The very first container is in Uganda, in the Bidi Bidi migration camp. And they have access to a lot of these solar devices and a lot of these sort of batteries, but that they're so far away from population centers and traditional infrastructure like recycling. It's really challenging to deal with a lot of this waste as these devices stop working. So we went and we put this container into his migration. I'm trained up 3 of the local migrants in how to take apart safely these devices and test them. They could, or repurpose them, or send them appropriately for recycling. So that's still operational there now. It's still there. That was one of the best projects I think that we did.
But you had to move out of your own company.
Yes. So we ended up agreeing to sell the business in 23 to one of the partners in India. So they were licensing the technology from us, and we ended up agreeing to sell the company at that point to them. I had the option of staying. My co-founder, Palton, he did end up staying with the company. But I wanted to explore new horizons. I then took a bit of time out to explore. So late 23, I was then invited to join as an entrepreneur residence Carbon 13. So Carbon 13 is a venture builder. It's focused on helping people who want to start businesses in climate, but don't necessarily have ideas. They help them form co-founding teams and then to work together to solve the problem. And Carbon 13 will invest in the best team. So I support those founders as they go on that journey. They go from coming in with not necessarily, with a vague idea of what they want to do, and help them turn that into something which could be investable, deeply fulfilling to share the experiences and to delve deeper into the more human side of entrepreneurship, which is also something which I find really fascinating. Alongside that, I also is invited to join the strategic leadership group for the Ayrton Fund. So the Ayrton Fund is £1 billion UK fund, which is all about commercializing research and development in emerging economies, the Commonwealth, so India in particular, Sub-Saharan Africa. And I support there on the circular energy storage challenge with the direction and the work that they're doing. I also am a board member of Fast Board 2030, which is a group based out of UCL's Institute for Global Prosperity, which is all about getting people into social enterprise and the impact that can.
So you basically became your parents. You became an entrepreneur and you started teaching entrepreneurship. But before I go into your teaching, I want to know, what are the big energy problems you see that the world is facing today, and who is doing the best in dealing with it?
The biggest challenge we've got at the moment is that we're putting a lot of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. There are other challenges as well, some really big challenges, but there's also a lot of work that's going on. So the UK, for example, has done a great job at reducing the amount of carbon that we're emitting. It is starting to come down, which is fantastic. The bigger challenge, I think, at the moment is the reliance on old fuels, things like coal, which is really big in China and really big in India as well. It's going to take a lot longer, I think, for those to be phased out. And this leads to the ultimate challenge that we hear all the time, these numbers of 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. There are a number of scenarios looking forward, and we're at that point where we need to do something quite quickly in order to make a difference.
Yeah.
It's also very challenging because we've got sort of various political regimes around the world which are not as interested in you find that the reason I became interested in all of this is because I go back to my PhD days. There was a UN scientist that came to our group and he told us that the world was Beyonce and he was towards the end of his career, but was in that place of deep cynicism about what could be possible. The thing that gives me hope is that if there's one thing humanity has shown time and time again throughout our history is our ability to preserve ourselves. And so if we look at the most recent example, the pandemic, the global pandemic, if you had said before that we were going to do a mass rollout of vaccination program around the world, or we were going to do that from a drug that was still relatively early in its development cycle, and we were going to do that all within 18 months, within 18 months, people in far-flung parts of the world are getting access to this vaccine, it would have sounded impossible.
Yes.
But we did it.
What is the problem in the world of renewable energy or climate that we are not able to see, that you as a scientist are able to see and tell us?
This is really more of a communication challenge, because when you hear things like 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees or 3 degrees, it doesn't sound like a lot. But as the world starts heating up, as the average temperature increases, the sea becomes less able to hold in carbon dioxide, which releases more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The oceans are actually one of the biggest sources or sinks for carbon dioxide. They absorb huge amounts of carbon dioxide. That's being then released at a faster rate. And this is the other thing, as humans, we are not very good at thinking exponentially. We're linear creatures, but actually these things are exponential. And it's so hard to visualize now what it's going to be like, but it's going to get a lot worse very quickly if we don't do something. But again, I remain optimistic, because I think if we take almost like a total war footing to the challenge, we can absolutely solve it, like we did with the pandemic.
What could happen if we do not handle climate change? What is the world that we're looking at?
If we do absolutely nothing and we just carry on the way we are, we'll get to a place where the world just can't sustain our presence on the planet. So the
nature's fury will come upon us.
It will become uninhabitable because of the damage that'll be done. It'll take a long time for the planet to repair itself and get that.
Especially those living by the sea.
The climate refugees. And you'll see areas of the world which are green and verdant today becoming deserts.
Let's buy electric, let's be electric car, and you work in the field of battery. Is that the right way to go?
Using electric is absolutely the right thing to do. We can charge that on solar and renewable. It has a bigger impact and a much faster payback than it would if it was being powered on a coal grid, as an example. There's a lot of misinformation about this. So some people say it makes no sense to use batteries at all. They're more polluting than traditional vehicle. It's not true. The time that they take to pay back the energy that goes into their production will change depending on how they're charged. So as an example, if you have an electric vehicle and you have solar as well, you actually have a more positive impact on the environment than if you were using an internal combustion engine car within about 30,000 kilometers. So that's about 2 to 3 years of use, compared to if you were on a coal-based grid where it might be closer to sort of 8-9 years, but there's still a positive impact over that period. So the more steps we can all take, the better.
What are the myths that need to be busted in terms of electric vehicle or the use of battery and the disposing of the battery, to say, oh, you're using more energy to create these batteries and to dispose them off, or let's say the ChatGPTs of the world are creating more pollution in their back offices. So what are the myths that we need to, or awareness that we need to have?
So AI is using a huge amount of energy, but we're also bringing online more power, more renewable power than ever before. A really good example: a decade ago, it would have taken us a whole year to install and sort of put solar into action. We can do that year's worth of solar from a decade ago in a day now. So again, this is concept of sort of the exponential change. Like, we are bringing so much more renewable power on board. It is making a really big difference. And in the developing economies, we've got a huge opportunity here as well. China is the world's biggest deployer of solar power. India has that opportunity as well to take a leading stance on this. And a lot of work is being done. So in a lot of the rural areas, for example, microgrids are a really powerful tool. So this is where you have solar plus batteries being used to power a whole village and provide that power at scale.
We're talking about solar now, so much here in the UK, and I know there's not so much sun. But when I was growing up, my mom used to have this solar energy cooker, and we always cooked our rice and our dal, and even cakes sometimes with this solar energy black big looking cooker. So that's, India has the sun.
Yeah.
And I think they did catch on to it at that point in time.
One of the things that struck me, I remember when I went to India in 2013, and again, if I look at the autos, they were all petrol powered or diesel powered at that time. I went again in 2019, and I would say about 50% of them were electric.
Now that we've established, you not only became an entrepreneur like your father, but you also teach to entrepreneurs and founders. And where does that inspiration come from?
So I often say that 90% of the decisions I made in the first startup, I would do differently if I had the chance to do again.
Really?
And I don't say that from a point of self-flagellation, but actually as a point of learning, because entrepreneurship is a craft just like any other. And we have to learn the skills and practice those skills in order to be the best that we can possibly be. And so Aceleron was a really valuable lesson in what to do and what not to do. And one of my key takeaways from it, one of my favorite phrases, I have lots of favorite phrases, but one of them is, there are two types of problems in business. There are people-related problems, and there are problems that you don't yet realize are people-related problems. No matter the business, and no matter the area that they're in, people are always the heart of it. People are the engine that drives a business forward. It's the people you deal with as customers. It's the people you deal with as partners. It's the people who are the end users of the technology. It doesn't matter, but there's people at every single stage, and therefore, the more we can understand about people, the better we will actually have a chance of being successful as an entrepreneur. I also think that sort of entrepreneurship is one of the best tools that you can have to explore yourself. And as the organization grows, you become more and more of a bottleneck to the success of the organization because of the position you're in.
In the world of AI, you're talking about people. How do you fit people in AI?
I think that AI, much like social media, is a tool. And, a hammer can be used to both destroy and it can be used to build. I believe firmly that artificial intelligence is one of the tools that we've got at our disposal that could really change the world in a positive way if we use it for good. And the way we use it for good is by augmenting people, not replacing people. And ultimately, it's our intelligence, it's our being as humans that have given rise to this technology. And we have the ultimate power to decide what we want to do with it. One of my friends, he said to me, this concept of organic intelligence, and I think that's absolutely right. It's not about sort of artificial intelligence, it's about the organic intelligence that we have.
This is where Lorefully sits as well, your next company in AI.
Yes.
But dealing between AI and people.
Yeah, so while I was doing all of this work with other entrepreneurs and sort of the various advisory pieces that I hadn't had enough of entrepreneurship and I wanted to go again. And so I was thinking about problems that we could solve, and myself and two co-founders, I've got two co-founders, Barry and Paul. They were both with me in my previous startup as members of the team, and we decided we wanted to work together, and we started looking at sort of what problems we could solve. And there was one problem that we saw, particularly in climate, where in order to achieve net zero by 2050, we need to employ over 26 million new workers by 2030. That's more than doubling the number of workers in the space. And by 2030, we also expect 20% of the existing workforce to retire because they reach that age. And so you have this big challenge where a lot of the knowledge that exists in how to do things, it's all being lost over time. Mm-hmm. And you've also got the generational divide where the Generation Alpha, the Generation Beta workers, they have a different view and a different way of learning and a different way of existing because they have grown up with computer technology, social media, and now, Generation Beta is the first generation which will have AI their whole life. So the way of work is very different. And I've spoken to companies where they say our average onboarding process is 24 months, and the average Generation Alpha worker will stay with us for 26 months. Because they have a different expectation. They learn a different way. They don't want to sit in a room and be talked at for 5 days on a topic. They want to be out there doing the work, learning as they go along, and systems are not designed to do that. And so we saw this really big opportunity in being able to capture knowledge. And this was, again, something I experienced in Aceleron, where we would learn how to do something. Time would be the enemy. We would never have the time to write these things down. And people would end up graduating from the company, and all of the knowledge and the learning that they had would end up walking out of the door with them. And so we designed a piece of software that was there to make it easy for people to share what they knew, and then let the artificial intelligence do the structuring of that information, so make it into something coherent and easy to reference in the future. You're building that system to complete the fabric, the knowledge fabric of the company.
I got it. People might leave the company, but what they learned would stay as a part of the process.
Yes.
Through Lorefully.
Yes. And so the name Lorefully comes from lore, meaning, it's spelled Lore, meaning a body of knowledge, which is typically passed from person to person by word of mouth. And so that's where it started. And then as we've gone forward and progressed, what we've realized is it's not so much about the knowledge of an individual company. It's actually the knowledge of the community, because in the Middle Ages, in the history of like how information was transmitted, the very first method of information remembrance was oral history, oral storytelling, where people would tell each other stories, and those stories contained vital information about the way the world works and the way society works. So Lawfully now, what we're really interested in is how can we capture the expert human insights, amplify the voices in the room from a community for the good of the community. We do this at events. So events like trade shows, conferences, where people are coming together, they're passionate about a topic, they want to know, and they want to talk about that topic. And what we've learned is that they're all subject matter experts. They all have their own view. And I really like this idea of thought equality and amplifying voices, because a recent event I went to, the Royal Academy of Engineering, we were there, we were talking about the state of the UK deep tech sector. And I was there asking people questions. And the number of people that said to me, I'm not qualified to answer this question. But when they spoke and they told me what their thought was about the question, they were saying things which no one else in the room was saying. They had a unique perspective. This was diversity in action, because it was their experiences, the lens through which they viewed the world, producing unique insights which would never be captured otherwise. In the last quarter, we've done this now at 15 different events. We've captured from those events over 800,000 words now. 800,000 words of expertise which would otherwise never have been captured and would have been lost to the sands of time.
Understood. So you go to a conference, and who is not the speaker of the conference, and they are just audiences, you take their views as well, compile them into report.
And it makes a lot of sense, because 1,000 brains, human brains, are much more powerful than one. we hear from the speakers and we hear from the panelists because they're the good and the great in a topic, but there's so much wisdom in the room that is not being engaged at all.
That's brilliant. I would have never thought of that kind of an idea. Being in the world of communication, Amrit, that's the plus of a scientific mind.
It took some time to get to this place.
Yeah.
But one of the most valuable skills is listening. And it was through that process of listening that we came across this as a really interesting topic space.
Tell me top 3 for a good entrepreneur.
So in terms of skills, so I think the top 3 things that you need really to be an entrepreneur is self-awareness. And coupled with that is empathy. So you need that ability to understand not just yourself, but yourself in relation to other people and what they see and sort of how they think as well. And then the final top 3 in my top 3 is resilience. That ability to keep going even when times are really difficult. One of my favorite quotes, another quote, is from a tennis player, Vitas, in the 70s. So he was a US, Lithuanian-born US. Nobody beats Vitas 17 times in a row. So he wasn't very good at tennis and he kept getting beaten. I love that. Absolutely love that quote because, again, if this is the practice we want, the skills that we want, it's not going to work. It's rare that it works the first time. And so we have to keep working at it. And just like I've got 2 children, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when they were learning how to walk, they couldn't do that without falling over. And so it takes time to get to a place where this can work. And that's where the resilience really comes in.
How beautiful and well put. Some grapevine told me your resilience in marriage, making your marriage work, you make your wife laugh every day. Is that your motto?
That's the one thing which I try and do every day is make Simran, my wife, laugh. You know, she's been there at the very beginning of this entrepreneurial journey. You know, we were introduced by one of my cousins, so it was kind of arranged, but we ultimately had the ability to, you know, we saw each other. We both had the option of saying, you know, it wouldn't work or it would work. So it was not forced in any kind of way. And we both wanted the same things out of life and both love each other very dearly. And you know, she's been there through the really difficult times and through the great times, and has supported, you know, the first 18 months, 24 months of the entrepreneurial journey. I was not earning a penny, and so we were really reliant on her work and her income to make that work. And it's very much a true partnership. And as I say, if I can make her laugh every day, then I've done my job right.
Where did you get this idea from? And has it been from day one?
I think pretty close to day one. I think because I love hearing her laugh. It's one of the most beautiful sounds in my mind, was hearing my wife laugh.
Yours was not a love, but almost an arranged marriage.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
So born and brought up here in the UK, how did you take to the concept of arranged marriage?
We never had a problem with it. I've never had a problem with it. I always seemed to make sense to me conceptually. I mean, as long as it wasn't, you know, as I say, forced, where it was like, this is your wife and that's the end of it. But actually, I think who knows me better than my parents and sort of family, and what it would be to work. And you know, so far we've been incredibly blessed because I know pretty much what Simran will want and is thinking, and she will know the same for me as well. And so we're aligned in so many ways on so many things. We didn't even realize. I mean, even down to like when we were born. I was born on the 3rd of June. That's my birthday, and her birthday is the 30th of June. We went to the same primary school, but we didn't realize that until sort of later. So we were actually sort of there. Schoolmates.
But you became life mates.
Yes.
Thanks to your parents. How amazing. You didn't know how to speak English till?
So I was 5 years old. Yeah. So we spoke exclusively Punjabi at home. And my parents only realized that I was going to go to school and I didn't speak a word of English. So they very quickly taught us how to speak English. So what is it that we bring? I mean, so a lot of the positive things from Indian culture is part of ours.
No, so do we become a little bit more intrusive and say, oh gosh, we have to conserve our culture because we are living here in the UK?
I think we have, being here in the UK gives us an opportunity to take the best of all cultures, the best of all worlds. But it's important that we remember where we come from. It's important to remember the journey, that our roots is very, very important.
So you were born and brought up here pretty much. And when you go, your Nanihal is in Nairobi and your father's side is in India.
From the outset, we were always taught as much as possible about our culture, about our history. We live in a multi-generational household, which is, common in India, not so common here. So, for example, my parents live with us. My brothers, we all live together with their wives. And then we've got our children as well. So
really? All in the same house?
Still all in the same house.
Are you serious?
Yes.
So how many, oh my God, 3 brothers, your father, and all your wives and children live in, how big is the house?
So my 2 brothers don't have any children at the moment. And there may come a point where the house isn't big enough for that. And so that might change things. But for right now, that's sort of how it works for us.
How amazing is that? How do you explain this to your British friends?
I tell them exactly that.
Do they feel surprised?
I think there's a little bit of surprise, but also there's a lot of, well, that must be really nice. I wish I had that as well. And I think these are things that we can be really proud of. It's a different way of living. I think in Western culture, you get to 18 and you're effectively kicked out of the house. And you've not had.
Your brothers have had that problem. Your father is not kicked you out even now.
No, not at all.
Being funny, but I don't know what it is like to be born here with Indian roots. What do you feel like? Where do you belong? Who are you?
I am both British and of Indian origin, and that's the way I think about it. We grew up here. We've had access to opportunities we wouldn't have had access to otherwise, but we don't forget where we come from. And that's a really important part. So, for us, we're Sikh. We still go to the Gurdwara every single week. We do everything that we do. We've been brought up with that philosophy. Seva is really important to us. So, all of these things are really important to us, and we are absolutely aligned with that. But also, we're in the UK. There's the British values that are really important as well, and they're not in conflict, which is the great thing. We can absolutely sort of be the best citizens we can and still be recognize and respect our roots and be really good people.
No, it's you were made to feel different in your school. You were made to feel that you look different and you don't belong. What did that feeling do to your identity?
It never changed my identity, or it never made me regret my identity. That was always, this is who I am. And that was very firm from the outset. But what it did make me want to do, and perhaps nurtured in me, was a spirit of unreasonableness, of wanting to change the system and make it better. So everything that I do now is not so much for myself. I keep thinking about how hard my grandparents worked when they came to the UK, how hard my parents worked and their generation worked. And they did all of that work with the view of how do we make it better for the next generation. So everything I do at the moment is with that same mindset of how can I make this better for my children, for all of their friends. And for me, when I see children around, whether they're my children or not, all I can see are my children. And so it's one of the reasons why I find it really difficult watching the news, for example, and all the sad things that happen. I cannot read stories about children. Because what I see is my children. And so I want the world to be better for their generation and the generation after that as well, because I'm of the belief that these are not our resources. This is not our world. We're just the stewards at this time and borrowing it borrowing the resources and the planet from the future generation.
From the future generation, indeed. How are you different from your parents? As in, you are brought up here, but they are of Indian origin. How do you think differently? What is the difference of someone being born and brought up here as compared to someone who has roots elsewhere?
I think that's a really good question. I don't think that there is that much difference between the way that they think, but they have brought me up and they have taught me.
What does the British culture teaches you which is different?
How to queue. So I say this.
How to queue. I learned that in this country as well. I had no clue how to queue. It's absolutely true. I think on that moment, we must queue in for the next one, which is a segment called High Five India. Your reward is a high five from me. Done? Should we do that?
Yeah.
India for you today.
For me, India, when I go to India, I feel at home. I feel at peace. So one of the things which you carry around in Western society, wearing the style like I do and sort of looking different, is that there is always that subconscious sort of feeling of, you are different. But when I go back to the Punjab, as an example, that melts away. But what's strange, though, I must say, when I'm there, it's always obvious that I'm not Indian born. So there is almost that reversal there as well. But I feel much more at peace in the Punjab than anywhere else.
Really? What makes you, what is it about?
It's being amongst other people like me.
They look like you.
Look like you. But I think also this is where we originate from. And so I think there's that deeper connection of I'm home.
I'm home. Yes, I'm home. I belong. So you feel you basically belong there. What is the British in you?
What is the British in me? My ability to queue? No, I think, again, we've had access to all of the education, all of the advantages of being here. And so I think that is a big part of the British, and maybe a sense that we can conquer the world as well.
That's why you go on conquering. All right.
If that's not too controversial.
That's fine. You've been to India over a period of time. Do you see any change in India today?
Really big change. I think from when I first went to India, which was 2000, I remember rolling blackouts from 2000 all the way up to maybe 2013, 2014. The times I've been since then, there's been much more stability. I remember the first time we took the road from Amrit Chandan to Jalandhar, again back in 2000. That was an 8-hour journey. And because the quality of the infrastructure has gotten better, the last time we did that trip, it was an hour and a half. Things like that really make a huge difference. The electrification, which I mentioned as well, like before there were no autos which were electric, and now they're majority electric. It certainly feels that way when you go there, which is a much nicer, smoother, more comfortable ride around as well. So I think these are some of the really big things that I've noticed.
For a person like you, and you could say this looking onto the camera, a boy who is growing up, looking like you, different, what is it that you want to say to him?
If I could perhaps go back in time to my younger self, and for anyone who is in that position now, I think there's a huge amount of beauty in the difference. It's difficult to see sort of at that time, but being able to actually embrace that difference and bring that unique perspective to the world means that you're bringing something which no one else is able to do because of that difference. And that's something which I think is really, really beautiful. I also think that if the more we can focus on learning and always approaching situations with curiosity, I really like the sort of concept of Hahnemann's razor, where the saying goes, if something is sort of goes wrong, assume the best intention as opposed to sort of malicious intent. I think that's a good lesson, as well as Occam's razor, which is it's usually the simplest situation or the simplest solution that is the reality of the situation, and because sometimes we can overthink these things, and don't be afraid to take the world and change it.
What will you say to the 17-year-old Amrit who opened his AS first year A-level report and got E's?
The thing I would say to that 17-year-old version of myself who opened that A-level result and got E's, I think there's a silver lining in all of these things, and it's what lesson can we take away from this? And there was a huge lesson and learning in that moment. And so whatever the situation is, and there are plenty of situations out there which are 99% bad, but even the 99% bad means that there is a 1% good. And, that was a life-changing moment. And, if I hadn't been through that experience, I'd probably be in a very different place. Maybe I'd be a doctor, a medical doctor now.
3 myths you want to break about Indian parents for everyone.
So 3 myths. Number 1, not all Asian parents, Indian parents want their children to be to be professionals, like doctors, engineers, lawyers. Not all Indian parents treat their children unequally, which is something which I've heard.
Like ladka ladki.
Yeah.
Boy, male and a female.
Yeah. And not all Indian parents had to climb over mountains of broken glass through derelict fields in order to get to school.
It is so true. Are you positive about Britain today?
I'm very positive about Britain today. I think we have a huge amount of opportunity. There are definitely challenges, but wherever there are challenges, there is opportunity. And we can either we can either choose to be the victim and let things happen to us, or we can be the agent of change and make things happen. And I'd rather be the agent making things happen than the victim who things.
You indeed have an India today. How positive are you about India?
India is poised to be one of the most exciting places. It already is massively exciting, especially from the technology scene. It's going to be even more exciting as it goes through the next phase of its journey. And it is poised to be one of the world leaders as well. It already is world leading in many ways, and it will continue to be that because it's a growing, booming economy.
Brilliant. Your life-changing moments and the lessons, the three things.
The life-changing moments. It was the first big moment I can point to was definitely the A-levels. I think that the path would have been very different if I managed to coast through and sort of do things very differently. I think the second was sort of getting that taste of entrepreneurship. It was like sipping from the poison chalice. Once I'd been there and I'd seen sort of actually you can work for yourself and you can make things change. That was absolutely life-changing. And I'd say probably the third life-changing moment so far was the day that my second son was born. So this is 2023. It was the 27th of June, 2023. So my son was born on the 2nd. So we were waiting for the process to start. And I was sat there sort of busy on emails, answering telephone, taking calls at a time when that shouldn't be the case. Should have been totally present. And it led to this moment of realization of why am I doing that? What is going on here? And what should I be thinking about instead? And so that sparked this whole sort of thinking around what is it that I'm aiming for and where is it I'm trying to go and what is it I'm trying to achieve. And so the things I would say, the top learnings, I've shared some of them already, but just to recap, people are the heart of everything. The two types of problems in business, the people related problems and the problems which you don't yet realize are people related. I think the second is that sort of the power of resilience, and sometimes just staying in the race is enough to win it. And the third is that, I used to think that racism wouldn't affect me and sort of the way of the world wouldn't affect me.
How?
And I don't say this to elicit pity, but really as a recognition of the way of the world. We have I have privilege which other people don't have. Other people have privileges which I don't have. Therefore, by its very nature, the journey that I am on is completely incomparable to anyone else's. And likewise, the journey they're on is completely incomparable to mine. And I say all of this because one of the hardest things, especially in the age of social media, and I would say this to any 17-year-old as well, don't be drawn in by what you see out there, because it's so often the highlight reel of someone else's life. You do not see the challenges that they face, and they face numerous challenges. And so we know that the game is getting better, but we have to understand how best to play the cards we've been dealt. And it is not a fair game. And so it's not healthy for us to compare. It's not healthy for us to look at our friends who, maybe the first day out of university, they've raised $10 million and they're out now doing an AI startup. Well, we don't know what their situation is. They might have had networks and friends and other people who, or maybe they had a wealthy uncle that could give them $10 million to start this thing. So Theodore Roosevelt once said, comparison is the thief of all joy. And I firmly believe that's the case as well. So
I think that's a very good thing. Comparison is the thief of all joys. It's a beautiful line. And I think all parents should remember that as well. I want to leave on a lighter note. So while we busted the myth about parents, Indian parents, bust the myth about Indian origin people here. 3 things to the British friends of yours. What are the Indian origin people not?
So one thing which we don't do is eat curry every single day. That's
We don't eat curry. I only eat curry. I never eat curry.
So that's a myth, I think. I think the other myth is we all speak a different language at home. And I think that's a myth. Actually, most of the time we speak English, and that is the way it is. And I think the third myth is that, we have the same sort of expectation about life. We don't all want to be sort of doctors, engineers, and so on.
Okay, brilliant. On that note, we have cleared a lot of myths here. So it has been an absolute wonderful time I had with you, Amrit, learning about you, learning about your journey, and mostly learning about the fact that you ended up doing exactly what you didn't want to, be an entrepreneur and teach. But you taught yourself lessons that many, many children might find hard and fall and falter. So congratulations on that and well done.
Thank you, Lavina. I'm incredibly grateful. I'm absolutely blessed. And I really enjoyed this conversation as well.
Oh, thank you. And Simran, I don't know if you have seen Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. Dekhi hai? You've made Simran's life anyway. You make her laugh once every day. So that's great. Thank you. Yes.
Hi.
Thank you, Amrit. That was absolutely smashing to hear that a boy following to the footsteps of his parents exactly did that. But you did absolutely brilliantly, and we are very proud of you. I'm sitting here, Pali Hill, Bandra Bhai here in Oxford Circus, London. This is a den, and they have smuggled the Indian spirit. So I feel quite embraced by the Indian spirit and the whole concept of sharing. So much food comes on your table that you're able to share with everyone around. And we Indians, one thing we can't live away from is our khana and our gana. So khana is bharpoor here, and so is in this den a lot of Indian spirit. So thank you, Pali Hill, Bandra Bhai, Oxford Circus, London, to host India, a story in the making.